Welcome to Regular Spanish Verbs. This video is intended to be a follow-up to our class and to help you review some of the basic principles of starting to conjugate Spanish verbs in the present tense. I say that there are 3.5 types of Spanish verbs. The first three are AR, ER, and IR verbs. Examples are hablar, comprender, and vivir. You'll notice that hablar ends in AR, and that's called the termination of the infinitive. Likewise, comprender ends in ER. That's the termination of the infinitive, ER. And IR is the termination of the infinitive, vivir. The infinitive of a verb is simply the to form, to talk, to understand, to live. Whatever's left of the verb after you remove the termination is called the root of the verb. Habl is the root of hablar. Now I say that there's an extra half type of Spanish verbs because that includes the idea of the irregular verb. Regular versus irregular when it comes to verbs really simply means that one type, the regular type, is consistent in the way that it conjugates. Irregular verbs don't follow that pattern, and most of the time the way they depart from that pattern is made evident in the first person, or yo. So irregular verbs have their own patterns within their conjugations, but they're a little bit different from regular verbs. Conjugations have patterns. When we're conjugating verbs, that is, putting them through their paces of I, you, he, she, and so on, you can see patterns from AR, ER, and IR verbs that are similar to each other and similar within the type. Once you learn that pattern, you can conjugate any infinitive you learn the same way. Fortunately, the number of irregular verbs that you absolutely must know to speak Spanish is pretty small, about 13 by my calculations. So the thing you want to be thinking is, let me learn this pattern. I don't have to learn each verb separately. Let me learn the pattern and then put other verbs into that pattern. Learn the pattern, then extrapolate. Let's just review briefly what conjugate actually means. The definition of conjugation is to give the different forms of a verb as they vary according to voice, mood, tense, number, and person. The voice can be passive or active, the mood, indicative, subjunctive, conditional, or imperative. The tense is the time, past, present, future. The number is singular or plural. I am singular, we are plural. And the person is I, you, he, she, it, and so on. Don't worry, as a beginner, you will be focused only on the present tense indicative because we want to at least be able to talk about what is now. So let's take a look at that first type, hablar. Most verbs, I would say probably 62.3% of all verbs in the Spanish language are AR regular verbs, and that's super good news for you. If you learn this pattern, you can learn a lot of verbs. Let's go through this conjugation together. Repeat after me. Yo hablo. Tú hablas. Usted habla. Nosotros hablamos. Ustedes hablan. Notice, for purposes of time, I'm leaving out el, ella. We know that usted is the formal form of tú. In other words, we call little kids tú, we call our friends tú, and we call everybody else usted. Ustedes is the plural of that, and I've expressed it here as y'all. So y'all, when you're talking to a bunch of people, it's always ustedes, neither formal nor informal, just plural. And ellos and ellas are the masculine and feminine forms of they. Okay, so we have 3 different pronouns in third person, you, he, she, and actually it too. And in third person plural, y'all, they, and that's it. So, once you know that, you can start rinsing and repeating. That is to say, you're looking at a different group of infinitives here, but they're all ARs. So if you know those terminations, o, as, a, amos, an, then you can conjugate all these verbs. You take the red part and you add the ending. So let's just try one of them. I'm going to choose to chat, platicar, and let's conjugate it. Ready? Repeat after me. Yo platico. Tú platicas. Usted platica. Nosotros platicamos. Ustedes platican. So you see the red lettering indicates the root of the verb. We take off the AR and we add our endings. Simple as that. The red part is the root of the verb. That describes the action. The O, on the other hand, of hablo, tells me the subject of the verb. I don't need to say yo in Spanish. I only need to say hablo, and everybody knows who's talking. This is something to be super conscious of. In English, I have to say I talk. I can't just say talk, because English verbs do not have the power of Spanish verbs. They don't carry the person and number within them. Hablo, because of the O ending, tells me that it's yo, or I. Let's look at an ER verb, where you're going to notice that there's similar patterns here. It's really exactly like an AR verb, except the vowel is A, not A, or E, not A. Try to pronounce your vowels in Spanish all the time. So, comprender is the same, except of the sound of A instead of A. Repeat after me. Yo comprendo. Tú comprendes. Usted comprende. Nosotros comprendemos. Ustedes comprenden. So you can see how similar that is. It's really very much the same. And all it takes is just beginning to internalize those terminations. O, es, e, hemos, en. Then you extrapolate that pattern to other ER verbs like vender or responder or aprender or comer. This is the last type, vivir. They are the least common, the IR verbs. The pattern is exactly the same as the ER verb. Do you see? The terminations o, es, e, imos, en are exactly the same, with the only exception being that in nosotros we have the E sound instead of the A. So think to yourself, the ER verb is A all the way through the conjugation. The IR verb is A all the way through too, except for in nosotros. That might help you, it might not. Just try to listen to yourself conjugating these verbs as we do them and just get in the habit. The IR verb sounds like this. Repeat after me. Yo vivo. Tú vives. Usted vive. And here it changes to the E sound. Nosotros vivimos. Ustedes viven. Not so hard, right? Now, irregularity really does exist. And we're not going to start with irregular verbs. It would be foolish. The only irregular verbs you know so far are ser en estar, en haber. And we really couldn't avoid that because ser, estar, en haber, well, it's about being. It's how you introduce yourself. But we start with regular verbs to get you used to what conjugation's like in Spanish. Most irregular verbs are Er, Ir verbs. When they are irregular, the irregularity usually pops up in the first person. Some verbs change roots a little bit. You may have heard of stem changing verbs, but they're not actually irregular, meaning that their terminations are consistent. What you want to do is learn our regular patterns first, and then we can look at irregular verbs later. Remember, práctica hace el maestro, which is how in Spanish you say practice makes perfect. Literally, practice makes the master. Práctica hace el maestro. Práctica for you should be saying verbs out loud. It's not a matter of memorizing. It's a matter of getting your mind to remember what sounds good. So when you practice alone at home, make sure that you speak out loud. It's been great working with you. Practice conjugating irregular Spanish verbs, and I'll see you in class.